The day we buried William, my husband of 45 years, was the day I discovered how little I truly meant to those I had loved and cared for. St. Mary's Church, where the service had taken place, was filled with an array of friends, family, colleagues, each coming to pay their respects to a man who had been nothing but kind and compassionate. William had been a beloved high school principal, someone who had touched the lives of so many. The ceremony, though sombre, was beautiful. I held myself together through the handshakes and condolences, my hand firmly grasped by our son, Robert. He had been so attentive throughout the day, guiding me through the crowd, ensuring that I had something to eat, checking that I was okay. His wife, Diana, was present as well, looking every bit the part of the grieving daughter-in-law, her expression properly solemn. But as the hours passed and the weight of grief began to suffocate me, I realized just how far from the truth their outward kindness really was. I needed a moment of peace, just 5 minutes of solitude, so I slipped away from the reception to a small side room. It was empty, everyone having already moved on to the after party. I sat in an armchair, closed my eyes, and let the tears fall. William, the man I had spent my entire adult life with, was gone, and I was left to face the world alone. But just as I was starting to find some peace in my sorrow, I heard the door creak open. Quickly, I wiped my eyes, not wanting to be caught in such a vulnerable state, but the people who entered didn't even notice me at first. I froze, listening to the conversation that followed. "I told you we should have brought this up before he died," Diana's voice rang out, stripped of all the sympathy she had shown just moments earlier. "It wasn't the right time," Robert replied, his voice sounding exhausted. "Well, now we have to deal with her," Diana continued, irritation dripping from her words. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart pounded in my chest. They were talking about me, about the plans they already had for my future plans that didn't involve me. "You need to talk to the lawyer first thing Monday. We need to know exactly what we're getting and how," Diana said, her tone colder than before. I could hear Robert sighing, clearly tired. "We'll figure it out," he muttered, but his words barely registered. "Speed up the inheritance. I'm putting the old woman in a nursing home," Diana said with a laugh. The words hit me like a slap in the face. The old woman. Me. It wasn't even the shock of hearing it that kept me rooted in place. It was the fact that William had made provisions for this very moment, for this betrayal. He'd known, somehow, that they would try to push me out of my own home. I sat still, hardly daring to breathe. How could they think this was okay? The house we had raised our son in, the home that held all our memories, now just an object to be sold off for their gain. They continued speaking as though I wasn't there, talking about the real estate market, about how much money they could make if they sold my house. I remained frozen, listening to the plans they had already made for me, plans they thought I would never hear. When they left, I finally stood, my legs trembling beneath me. I caught sight of myself in a mirror on the wall. Pale, aged, and diminished by grief. Is this how they saw me? A burden, something to be discarded when no longer useful. The thought lingered in my mind as I stumbled back to the reception, my heart heavy with the weight of betrayal. William had left me to navigate this battle alone. But little did they know, I wasn't as helpless as they thought. The following days after the funeral felt like a blur. The house, once filled with the warmth of shared laughter and the comforting presence of William, now felt cold and hollow. I wandered from room to room, each step a reminder of what was no longer there. The scent of his cologne lingered in the hallway, a bittersweet reminder of the man I had loved for so long. His absence was suffocating. I tried to focus on the small details around me, William's reading glasses on his nightstand, the cardigan still hanging by the door, his crossword puzzle half finished on the coffee table. I couldn't bring myself to touch anything, let alone move any of his belongings. It felt wrong, like I would be erasing him from the world we had built together. How could I possibly go on without him? But even in my grief, there was something stirring inside me. I could hear Diana's voice echoing in my mind, and I knew that I couldn't let them push me out of my home. This house, with all its imperfections and memories, was where I belonged. I wasn't ready to give it up, not yet. And certainly not because Diana and Robert thought it was time for me to move on. That night, as I sat alone in the living room, I found myself wondering if William had known what would happen after he was gone. He had always been so practical, always thinking ahead. Had he seen this coming? Had he predicted that I would be pushed aside, treated like an obstacle to be dealt with? I didn't know the answers, but I was beginning to realize that William had done more for me than I had ever given him credit for. The safety net he had provided was more than just financial. It was a shield against the very thing I was now facing. The next morning, I made a phone call that would change everything. I dialed Dr. Patterson's number, William's longtime physician, and a man I had come to trust deeply over the years. His voice on the other end of the line was warm, full of concern. "Eleanor, how are you holding up?" he asked, his tone genuine. "I'm managing," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Actually, I'm calling about something specific. Those last few weeks, did William ever talk to you about what would happen to me, about his concerns for my future?" There was a pause on the line before Dr. Patterson spoke again. His voice measured. "He did. Yes." "What did he say?" I asked, my heart racing. Dr. Patterson hesitated. "He asked me to keep an eye on you, Eleanor, to be available if you needed a medical opinion about anything." "A medical opinion," I repeated, confused. "Yes," he continued. "He was concerned that there might be pressure for you to leave your home before it was medically necessary. He wanted to make sure you wouldn't be forced out without a proper evaluation." The weight of his words settled over me like a heavy blanket. William had thought of everything. He had anticipated Diana's push to get me out of the house and had made sure that I would be protected from being rushed into a decision that wasn't medically justified. "I see," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Would you be willing to put that in writing?" "Of course," Dr. Patterson replied. "In fact, I've already prepared such a letter. He asked me to have it ready for you." I felt a surge of gratitude for William, even in death. He had been thinking ahead, ensuring that I would have the support I needed to stand my ground. For the first time since his passing, I felt a flicker of hope. I wasn't alone in this battle. William had made sure of that. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with the letter in front of me, the words of Dr. Patterson offering me the reassurance I so desperately needed. Diana's words, the ones I had overheard at the funeral, still echoed in my mind. "Speed up the inheritance. I'm putting the old woman in a nursing home, but now I had something they didn't expect to safeguard. I wasn't just going to sit back and let them make decisions about my life without me." When Robert and Diana arrived at my house later that evening, I was ready. I had already made up my mind. I would no longer be passive in this battle. I would protect my home, my independence, and my dignity, no matter what it took. They arrived, as always, with forced smiles plastered on their faces. Robert's expression was weary, but there was an underlying tension in the air, one that Diana's practiced cheerfulness couldn't disguise. "Mum," Robert began, sitting down on the couch, "we need to talk about some practical matters." I nodded calmly, my hands steady despite the nervous flutter in my stomach. "Of course, I've been thinking about practical matters too." Diana, ever the planner, immediately pulled out a set of brochures and laid them on the table. "We've found some lovely senior living communities," she said, her voice as sweet as ever. "This one has a waiting list, so it's best to get on it early. I glanced at the brochures, my resolve hardening. Before we talk about that, I'd like to ask Sandra to join us. She's been helping me with some things, I said, glancing at the door as I spoke. Diana's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Sandra? Yes, Sandra? I said firmly. She's been working with me for the past few months, and she has some professional experience that might be useful. A few moments later, Sandra, William's home health nurse, entered the room, and with her calm, no-nonsense demeanour, she sat beside me, offering me a silent boost of confidence. I could feel Diana's discomfort as Sandra looked at the brochures with a critical eye. The tension was palpable, and it felt good to know I wasn't alone in this fight. Robert, Diana, I began, taking a deep breath. I've given this a lot of thought, and I've decided to stay in my home. Diana's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. Eleanor, we understand that this house means a lot to you, but practically speaking, it's too much for you to manage alone. I'm perfectly capable of managing on my own, I said, my voice steady. I've spoken with Dr. Patterson, and he agrees. There's no medical reason for me to leave my home. Diana's lips pressed into a thin line, but I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how to counter my words. This is about more than just you, Eleanor. It's about what's best for the whole family. And what's best for me, I countered gently, is staying in my home. William made sure that I would be protected from having to leave against my will. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken tension. Finally, Robert broke the silence. Mum, I didn't realise how serious this was, he said quietly, but I understand now. Diana didn't say anything, but the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't giving up easily, but neither was I. The days that followed felt like a constant battle, each encounter with Robert and Diana weighing heavier on my heart. I had hoped that they would respect my decision, but I quickly realised that they saw my independence as a hindrance, an obstacle that needed to be overcome. They were relentless, returning time and time again with more proposals for practical living arrangements, but I wasn't ready to give up the life I had built in this home, no matter how hard they pushed. The tension between Diana and me grew more palpable with each passing visit. She came by often, her smiles more strained, her words increasingly sharp as she tried to convince me that moving into an assisted living community would be the best choice for me. I began to feel as if I were caught in a tug-of-war, my dignity and autonomy on one side, and their desire for control and convenience on the other. One afternoon, Diana showed up at my door, her arms loaded with yet another set of brochures, her demeanour as polished and rehearsed as ever. Eleanor, I've been thinking, she began, as if the words had been carefully rehearsed. There's a beautiful community just a few miles away. I know you're not ready to leave yet, but we really need to start planning for the future. I took a deep breath, the familiar weight of frustration rising within me. Diana, I've made my decision, I said firmly, not allowing her to finish her pitch. I'm staying here. I don't need to move to one of those places. She paused for a moment, clearly surprised by my resolve. But Eleanor, think about the future. You can't live in this house forever. It's too big, and you're alone now. I'm not alone, I said, my voice steady. I have my health, my home, and I have the people who care about me. That's enough. Diana looked at me, her eyes narrowing with frustration. You're being stubborn, Eleanor. You don't know what's best for you. I met her gaze, unflinching. I know what's best for me, Diana, and I know that this house is where I belong. That evening, after Diana left, I sat in the living room, reflecting on the conversation. It seemed that no matter what I said, she wouldn't back down, but I wasn't going to let her have the last word. I had made a promise to myself, and I was going to honour it. I would stay in my home, and I would fight to keep it. The following morning, I woke up with a new sense of determination. I wasn't going to be pushed around any longer. I called Sandra, the nurse who had helped care for William during his last months, and asked her to come over. I needed her professional advice, and more importantly, I needed her to be a witness to the changes I was planning to make. Sandra arrived shortly after, and we spent the morning going over the list of modifications I could make to ensure my home was as safe as possible. Grab bars in the bathroom, better lighting in the hallways, a medical alert system small. Simple changes that would allow me to continue living here independently. As we walked through the house together, I could already imagine the transformation. This place would be just as comfortable, just as familiar, and just as safe as it had always been. As we finished our tour, Sandra looked at me with approval. "You're doing the right thing. Eleanor, these changes will help, and you're in good health. There's no reason why you can't continue living here." I smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I wasn't alone in this. I had allies, and I was taking control of my own future. The next day, Robert and Diana came over, as expected. This time, however, I was ready. I greeted them with a calm smile, but there was no mistaking the determination in my eyes. "Mum, we really need to talk about the house," Robert began, his voice tinged with a hint of concern. "I agree," I said, my tone measured, "but I'm not going to discuss moving. I've made my decision. I'm staying in my home." Diana opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I've made arrangements. Sandra has helped me put a plan in place. I'm adding some modifications to the house to make it safer, and I'm getting a medical alert system. I've spoken with Dr. Patterson, and he agrees I'm perfectly capable of living here." Diana's expression shifted from frustration to disbelief. "But Eleanor, you can't honestly think this is the best option for you." I stood firm. "It's the best option for me, and I've done everything I can to ensure I'll be safe. This is my home, and I intend to keep it." There was a long pause, and I could see the conflict brewing in Robert's eyes. He was torn between his loyalty to his wife and his concern for me. Diana, on the other hand, seemed to be calculating her next move, as if weighing the consequences of continuing this battle. Finally, Robert spoke. "I just want what's best for you, Mum, but I can see that you've thought this through. I'll support you, even if I don't agree with it." Diana's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't say anything. She stood up abruptly, clearly frustrated. "Fine," she muttered, "but I still think this is a mistake." As they left, I felt a sense of victory, small, but significant. It wasn't over, but it was a step in the right direction. I wasn't going to let them push me out of my home. I had my plan, I had my support, and I had my dignity. That night, as I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea, I reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. I had never imagined that at 70 years old I would be fighting to keep my home, to keep my independence, but here I was, stronger than I had ever realised. And as the doorbell rang again, signalling the arrival of my granddaughter Emma, I couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Emma had become my ally, and she wasn't about to let anyone push me around either. The next few days passed in a quiet but determined haze. My house felt like my fortress, my sanctuary where I could still find peace amidst the chaos that had been swirling around me since William's death. But even in my quiet defiance, I knew the battle was far from over. Diana wasn't going to give up easily, and Robert, as much as he seemed to want to support me, still seemed torn. I spent the mornings taking walks around my garden, tending to the plants that William and I had carefully nurtured over the years. The fresh air and the sound of the wind in the trees helped clear my mind, and I found comfort in the simplicity of these small moments. But even then, I could feel the weight of the situation hanging over me. The following week, as I was pruning the rosebush near the front porch, I saw Diana's car pull up in the driveway. I straightened, my heart skipping a beat. I wasn't sure what she wanted now, but I had no intention of letting her sway me. "Eleanor," she said, stepping out of the car with a smile that felt more forced than genuine, "we need to talk." I folded my arms across my chest. "We've talked enough. Diana, I've made my decision, and I don't need to hear any more about how I should leave." Her smile faltered, but she pushed forward. "I understand you're upset, but this isn't about being upset. It's about what's best for you, Eleanor." "No, Diana," I said, my voice firm. "What's best for me is staying here, in my home, where I've lived for decades. You're not going to change my mind. No matter how many times you come here." She sighed, clearly frustrated, but she didn't back down. "I think you're making a huge mistake. You can't live here forever. Not by yourself." I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "I don't need you to decide what's best for me. I've spoken with Dr. Patterson, and I'm perfectly capable of staying here. I've made arrangements for any future needs, and I'm not going to be pressured into moving just because you think it's time for me to go." Diana's expression grew cold, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something else in her eyes, something darker. "This house could make a huge difference for our family." "Eleanor," she said, her voice low, "Robert and I could use the money. We could help Emma with her college, make sure everything is taken care of." I met her gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "This house isn't just a piece of property to be sold off. It's where I've lived for my entire adult life. It's where William and I built our family. I'm not going to let you turn it into a transaction." Diana stood there, silent for a moment, clearly weighing her next words. But before she could respond, Robert's car pulled into the driveway. I watched as he got out and walked toward us, a concerned look on his face. He had always been the peacemaker, trying to smooth things over, but I wasn't sure where his loyalty truly lay. "Mum, Diana," Robert said, his tone tentative. "What's going on?" "I'm trying to help her see reason." "Robert," Diana said, her voice rising, "she's not making the right decision. She needs to understand that she can't live here forever." "I'm perfectly capable of living here, thank you," I snapped, turning to face my son. "And I've already made arrangements for the future." Robert looked between us, sensing the tension in the air. "Mum, I just want what's best for you," he said, his voice softer. "I don't want you to be alone in this big house, struggling with things. I don't want you to feel like you have to do everything by yourself." "I don't feel that way," I said, my voice steady but with a touch of emotion. "I've got my health, I've got my home, and I've got the support I need. I'm not alone, Robert. I don't need to be put in some facility to make your lives easier." Diana's face twisted with frustration, but Robert placed a hand on her shoulder, giving her a brief look that silenced her for the moment. He turned back to me, his expression softening. "I hear you, Mum. I really do, and I respect your decision, but I need to know you're not just saying this because you're angry. I need to know you're really okay with this." I took a deep breath, letting the words settle in. "I'm not angry, Robert. I'm scared. Yes, but I'm not going to let fear control me. I've thought this through, and I'm at peace with my choice." For a moment, Robert stood there, taking in my words, and then, to my surprise, he nodded. "Okay, Mum, I just want you to be happy. If this is what's best for you, then I'll support it." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't a complete victory. Diana still hadn't fully accepted my decision, and I knew that the tension wasn't going to disappear overnight, but it was a step forward. Robert had finally understood. He had seen that I wasn't being unreasonable, and that was all I needed. Diana, on the other hand, remained silent. Her eyes narrowed, her mouth set in a tight line. but I could see the change in her as well. This wasn't going to be as easy for her as she thought. "I'm glad we could talk about this," I said, trying to diffuse the tension. "Now, I'm going to go inside and get some rest. I'm sure we'll have more conversations in the future." Robert gave me a gentle smile. "Take care of yourself." "Mum," he said, "we'll talk soon." As they left, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the winning side. And I had something else too, something more important than the house, more important than any money or property. I had my strength, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. The days after Robert and Diana's visit were a blur of quiet determination. The house, once a place of shared memories and joy, had become a battleground, a place where every decision seemed to carry weight. Every word spoken felt like it could tip the scales one way or another, but I refused to let that dictate my life. I refused to let my home become a prize to be fought over. Emma, my granddaughter, had been coming over more frequently in the past week. She seemed to sense the undercurrent of tension, but like me, she wasn't about to let it tear her apart. Emma had always been a quiet, introspective child like her grandfather in so many ways, but she had a fierce streak, one that reminded me more and more of the person I used to be. One afternoon, Emma knocked on my door, her eyes wide with concern as she stepped inside. "Grandma," she said softly, "I know things have been really tough with Mum and Dad, but I want you to know I'm here for you. You're not alone." I smiled at her, touched by her words. "I know, sweetheart. You've always been my little rock, even when you didn't know it." Emma sat down across from me, her legs crossed under her as she looked at me with those knowing eyes of hers. "I don't understand why they're pushing so hard for you to leave. You're fine here. You've always been fine here." "I am fine here, Emma," I replied, my voice steady but tinged with the weariness of everything I'd been carrying. "But sometimes people don't see things the way we do. They don't understand the memories, the history, and the love that's embedded in these walls." Emma's lips twisted into a frown. "They just want the house, don't they?" I hesitated, my fingers nervously tracing the edge of my teacup. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe it's not just about the house. Maybe it's about control, about what they think I need or want. But I know what I need, Emma. I need to stay here. I need to feel like I have a say in my own life." Emma nodded, her expression serious. "I know, Grandma, and I think that's the most important thing, having control over your own life. You taught me that." Her words warmed my heart, and for a brief moment, the weight of everything lightened. I wasn't alone in this fight. I had Emma, and as long as she was by my side, I knew I could handle whatever came my way. The following day, as I sat in the garden with a cup of tea, a thought struck me. What if I could make this situation work for me, instead of letting it drag me down? What if, instead of resisting every suggestion that came my way, I could find a way to use it to my advantage? Diana and Robert had assumed they could push me into a decision, but what if I turned the tables? The idea seemed ridiculous at first, but the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. I had to take control. I wasn't going to let them dictate my future. I would take the reins. That evening, when Diana came over again, I was prepared. She entered the house with her usual air of helpfulness, holding a new set of brochures this time for a different senior living community. I had to hand it to her. She was persistent, but I had a plan of my own now. "Eleanor," she began, her tone smooth as ever, "I think you should really take a look at these options. They're really lovely places, and you'd have everything you need, including company and activities." I raised my hand, stopping her before she could continue. "Diana, I've been thinking about it, and I've come to a conclusion." Her eyes brightened, clearly thinking she'd finally worn me down. "I'm listening. I'm going to stay here," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But I'll need some help to make this house more manageable. I'm not ready to give it up. Not yet. I've spoken with Sandra and some professionals, and we've come up with a plan. Small modifications, nothing drastic. Grab bars in the bathroom, better lighting, a medical alert system. Nothing that will change the character of this house." Diana's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. "You're still refusing to see reason, aren't you?" "I am seeing reason," I replied, my tone unwavering. "I'm doing what's best for me, and I'm making sure I'm safe. But I'm staying here. This is my home, Diana, and I intend to keep it." Diana stood there, looking at me as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. For a moment, I thought she might say something cutting, something to tear me down, but instead she just sighed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "I don't understand why you're making this so hard," she said, her voice softer now. "I'm not making it hard, Diana," I said. "I'm making it mine. For the first time in a long time, I'm making a decision that's right for me." Her expression softened for a moment, but it was fleeting. "I'll get the papers ready," she said, her voice tight with resignation. "But don't think I'm giving up on this. I'll be back." As she left, I felt a strange sense of triumph, though I knew the war was far from over. Diana was only backing off for now, but I had something she didn't expect, the strength of knowing my own mind. The following week, I received a call from Robert, who was finally beginning to see things more clearly. "Mum," he said, his voice softer than it had been in weeks, "I've been thinking about what you said, and I want to support you. If staying in the house is what you really want, then I'm with you." His words meant more to me than I could express. It was the first time he'd truly seen me, truly understood my position, and it made all the difference. Even though Diana's grip on the situation remained tight, I now had Robert's support, and, with Emma by my side, I knew I wasn't alone in this. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to relax. If only for a moment, I had my home, my health, and the people who cared for me. That was enough. As the weeks went by, the tension between Diana and me didn't entirely dissipate. I could feel the shift in the air every time she came over, her attempts to help still laced with underlying frustration. But I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let her push me into something I didn't want not anymore. Robert continued to visit more frequently, showing a level of support I hadn't expected from him. His calls and visits, though often awkward and hesitant, were enough to reassure me that he was trying to understand, trying to do the right thing, even if it meant standing up to Diana. He wasn't entirely convinced that staying in the house was the best choice for me, but he respected my wishes, and that meant the world to me. Emma, on the other hand, was a constant source of strength. Her unwavering belief in my independence gave me the courage to keep fighting. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch together, watching the sun sink below the horizon, she turned to me with a smile. "You know, Grandma," she said, "this house, it's a part of you. It's where you belong, and I'm glad you're not letting anyone take that from you." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I had spent so much of my life giving to others, caring for William, raising Robert, and even supporting Diana when she entered our family. But now, at 70 years old, it was time for me to take back control. It was time for me to protect what was mine, not just the house, but my dignity, my peace of mind, and my right to make decisions for myself. The following week, things took an unexpected turn. I had been working on organising the house, putting together the necessary plans for the modifications that Sandra had suggested. It was a small step, but one that made me feel like I was taking charge of my future. That's when the phone rang. It was Mr. Goldstein, the lawyer who had helped William with his estate planning. I had been expecting his call, but when he spoke, his words caught me off guard. "Mrs. Bradley," he began, "I hope you're doing well. I wanted to touch base regarding the trust William set up for you. There's been a development that you should be aware of." I leaned forward, my heart suddenly racing. "What development?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's a clause in the will that I believe will be of interest to you," he continued. "You see, William had made sure that if you were ever pressured into leaving the house, there was a safeguard in place to ensure the property would not pass to Robert or Diana. It's in the event that you were forced out against your will, the house would instead go to the Alzheimer's Research Foundation, a cause that was very dear to William's heart. I felt my breath catch in my throat. It had always been my suspicion, but now, hearing it confirmed, it hit me harder than I expected. William had been anticipating their actions, anticipating Diana's manipulative tactics, and Robert's unwillingness to stand up for me. "I never knew about this," I whispered, still in shock. "William wanted to protect you," Mr. Goldstein said gently. "He knew how much you loved your home, and he wanted to ensure that you wouldn't be forced out. I thought you should know that the trust is set up to prevent anyone from taking advantage of you in this situation." Tears welled up in my eyes as I processed his words. William, even in his final days, had been thinking of me, thinking of how to protect me from the very people who were supposed to care for me. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me, along with a renewed sense of strength. William had given me the tools to fight back. Now it was time to use them. "I'm grateful for you letting me know," I said, my voice trembling. "I'll be in touch soon." After hanging up, I sat in silence for a while, the weight of the information settling over me. I wasn't just fighting for my home, I was fighting for the respect and dignity that I deserved. William had been there for me, even after his death, and now it was my turn to honour his memory by standing firm in the face of this pressure. That evening, I called Robert and told him about the clause in the will. "Robert," I said, my voice steady, "there's something I need to share with you. William had made sure that the house would not be sold or taken from me without my consent. If I'm ever forced out, the property will go to charity. He set it up to protect me." I could hear him take a deep breath on the other end of the line. "I had no idea," he said quietly. "I'll talk to Diana about it." I didn't realise how serious this was. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "It's serious, Robert, but now I have the peace of mind knowing that William's wishes are being honoured." The next day, Diana came by, her expression tense as she walked through the door. She didn't waste any time getting to the point. "You've told Robert about the will, haven't you?" she said, her tone sharp. "I have," I replied, meeting her gaze firmly. "I just wanted to make sure you knew where things stand." Diana's face hardened, but I didn't flinch. "I'm not going anywhere, Diana," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "I'm not leaving my home, and there's nothing you can do to change that." She narrowed her eyes at me, her jaw clenched. "This isn't over, you know." "It is over for now," I said. "I've made my decision, and I won't be pushed around any more." Diana didn't respond right away. She stood there for a moment, glaring at me, but eventually she turned and walked out, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. As the door closed behind her, I let out a breath I hadn't realised I was holding. The battle wasn't over, but I had won a crucial victory. I had my home, and more importantly, I had my dignity. I would fight for both, and I would not let anyone take them from me. As the weeks passed, I found a strange sort of peace settling over me. I was no longer afraid of Diana's visits, no longer intimidated by her calculated offers and persistent arguments. She had tested my resolve, but I had stood firm. I had the legal safeguards in place, and more importantly, I had my own strength. Robert, too, seemed to have taken a step back from the drama. He visited more often, and though the tension still lingered between him and Diana, I could sense a shift in his attitude. It wasn't easy for him, I knew, but he was trying, and that meant a lot. One morning, after a particularly long and frustrating week, I sat down in my favourite chair in the living room. The sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over everything. The house, though it had once felt so empty without William, was beginning to feel like mine again. There was a sense of familiarity, of comfort, that had been absent for so long. I was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell, and when I opened it, I was surprised to find Emma standing there, her arms crossed as she looked up at me. "Grandma," she said, her voice serious, "we need to talk." I stepped aside to let her in. My curiosity piqued. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" Emma sat down on the couch, looking more mature than I had ever seen her. "It's about Mum," she said quietly. "She's not happy with the way things are going. She told Dad she's going to try something else to get you to move out." I felt a jolt of concern shoot through me, but I quickly masked it with a calm expression. "What does she plan to do now?" Emma sighed, a mixture of frustration and concern on her face. "She didn't say exactly, but I think she's talking about selling the house behind your back. She's trying to convince Dad that it's what's best for you, that you can't live here alone forever." I leaned back in my chair, processing her words. Part of me had expected this. Diana wasn't the type to back down easily, but hearing Emma confirm it made my stomach churn. "I won't let her," I said firmly, my voice steady. "This is my home, and I won't be pushed out." Emma nodded, her eyes flashing with determination. "I know, Grandma. But you should know Mum's not going to stop. She's going to keep pushing, and I think she's going to make things even harder." I felt my heart sink. I had hoped that after everything, Diana would realise that I wasn't going to be manipulated, but it seemed that the fight wasn't over yet. "I've made plans, Emma," I said, trying to calm myself. "I'm not going anywhere. I've already spoken to a lawyer, and I'm getting the house ready for any changes I might need to make. I won't let her take this from me." Emma sat up straighter, her expression softening. "I believe in you, Grandma. I won't let her push you around either. You've always been strong, and I know you can do this." Her words meant more to me than I could express. As much as I wanted to protect Emma from all of this, I realised that she was already protecting me in her own way. She was my ally, and she was willing to stand with me. The next day, Robert came over unexpectedly, a sombre expression on his face. He didn't sit down immediately, instead standing by the door as if unsure how to approach me. "Mum," he said quietly, "I need to talk to you about something." I motioned for him to sit. "What's on your mind, Robert?" He hesitated, glancing over at the kitchen where Emma had been helping me organise the cupboards. "It's about Diana," he began. "I know she's pushing you hard, and I know you're not happy about it, but I need to be honest with you, she's not going to stop. She feels like we're wasting an opportunity here, and she's not going to let this go easily." I nodded, feeling a wave of frustration building inside me. "I'm aware of that," I said, my voice tight. "But I'm not going anywhere. I've made my decision." Robert ran a hand through his hair, looking conflicted. "I understand that, Mum, I really do. But you need to know that Diana is already making plans. She's talking about selling the house without your consent, and if that happens, there's not much I can do to stop her." I leaned forward, my heart racing. "You can stop her, Robert. You're my son. You can stand up to her. This is my house, and she doesn't get to decide for me." "I know, Mum, I know," Robert said, his voice softening. "I'm not going to let her do this, but you need to prepare yourself for a fight. This isn't going to be easy." I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. "I'm ready for it," I said, my voice more confident than I felt. "I've been preparing for this for months, and now it's time for me to make sure she knows I'm not backing down." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation hanging between us. Finally, Robert spoke again. "I'm with you, Mum. I'll support you, no matter what. I'm sorry it took me so long to realise just how serious this is." "Thank you, Robert," I said, my heart swelling with gratitude. That's all I needed to hear. The next few days passed in a blur of preparations. I finalised the plans with Sandra and the home healthcare service, making sure everything was in place should I need extra help. I knew Diana would continue to fight for control, but now I had the tools to defend myself. I had the legal documents. I had my support. And most importantly, I had my resolve. I wasn't going to lose my home, not to Diana, not to anyone. The battle between Diana and me intensified as the weeks wore on. She had always been relentless, but now there was a sharpness to her determination that made every encounter feel like a confrontation. She didn't come by as often, perhaps knowing that I would stand firm, but when she did, it was always to push the same argument that the house was too much for me, that I needed to leave, that my life would be easier if I just accepted the inevitable. But every time she said those words, I grew more resolute. This was my home, and no one, not even Diana, was going to take it from me. The next time she came to visit, I was ready. I had already prepared the house for the next phase of my plan, making the small adjustments that would help me stay independent for years to come. The grab bars were installed in the bathrooms, the lighting had been updated, and a medical alert system had been put in place. Just as Sandra had recommended, the changes were subtle, but they were enough to ensure that I could continue living here safely. As I walked into the living room that afternoon, I saw Diana standing by the front door, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She looked as though she had come to a decision, and I knew this visit would be different. I steeled myself for the conversation ahead. "Eleanor," she began, her voice cool but not without a hint of frustration. "We need to talk. This has gone on long enough." I nodded, sitting down across from her. "What do you want to talk about?" She didn't waste time getting to the point. "I've been doing some thinking," she said, her voice sharp. "You need to face reality. You can't live here alone. It's unsafe. It's unrealistic. You're not getting any younger, and it's only a matter of time before something happens. I've tried to be patient, but I'm done waiting." I met her gaze, my heart pounding in my chest. "You're wrong, Diana. I'm perfectly capable of living here, and I've taken the necessary steps to ensure that I can continue doing so. I don't need your help." Diana's face flushed, her irritation clear. "You're being stubborn. You don't know what's best for you. You think you can just go on like this, pretending everything is fine. But it's not." "It is fine," I said firmly. "It's more than fine. This is my home, and I'm not going anywhere." She laughed bitterly, her eyes narrowing. "You can't be serious. You're just too proud to admit that you need help. But you'll see, eventually, you'll realise I was right all along." "No." "Diana," I said, my voice unwavering, "I'm not too proud. I'm simply not going to let you take my home from me. You've made it clear that you want the house, but I'm not going to give it up. Not to you. Not to anyone." Her expression hardened, but I could see a flicker of doubt in her eyes. For the first time in months, I felt like I was winning, like I was standing up for myself in a way I hadn't before. "I don't understand you, Eleanor," she said, her voice low, almost pleading. "Why do you insist on holding on to something that doesn't make sense? This house, this life, it's over." "No, it's not," I replied, my voice steady. "This house is still a part of me. It's where I've lived, where I've loved, where I've raised my son. It's not just a house, Diana, it's my home, and I'm not giving it up for anything. She looked at me for a long moment, as if trying to gauge whether I was serious. Then, with a frustrated sigh, she turned and walked toward the door. I won't stop. You know, she said as she opened it. I'll keep trying to get you to see reason. I'm not going to change my mind, I said, standing up to face her. And I'm done with these games. Diana, you don't get to make decisions about my life anymore. With that, she left, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a moment, the weight of the conversation sinking in. Diana had made it clear she wouldn't stop trying to force me out. But now, I was more certain than ever that I wasn't going anywhere. Later that evening, as I sat with Emma in the kitchen, I couldn't help but think about how far I'd come. Just a few months ago, I would have been terrified to stand up to Diana like that. But now, I felt empowered. I had found my voice again, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. Emma, sensing the weight of the situation, sat across from me and smiled. You know, Grandma, I think you're really starting to win. You've got all your plans in place, and you're not letting anyone tell you what to do. I'm really proud of you. I smiled back, my heart swelling with pride. Thank you, sweetheart. It hasn't been easy, but I'm not going to let anyone push me around anymore. This is my home, and I'm going to protect it no matter what. Over the next few days, I continued to make progress on my plans for the house. I worked with Sandra to ensure that all the safety modifications were in place, and I made sure that I had everything I needed to stay independent. Diana's words still echoed in my mind, but I didn't let them distract me. I had a purpose now, and nothing was going to take that away from me. Robert, too, seemed to be warming up to the idea of me staying in my home. He came by to check on me, and we spent hours talking about the house, about the past, and about the future. Slowly, but surely, the gap between us seemed to be closing. One evening, as I sat on the porch, watching the sun set, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. I had been through so much, but I had come out the other side stronger than I had ever been before. I had my home, my health, and the love of those who mattered most to me, and no matter what Diana tried to do, I wasn't going anywhere. A few weeks had passed since my last confrontation with Diana, and while things had calmed down, the tension was far from gone. It simmered beneath the surface, always present, always threatening to boil over. But I was prepared now. I had my lawyer, my plans in place, and a newfound sense of self-worth that no one could take away from me. One afternoon, as I sat at the kitchen table, carefully sorting through some of William's old papers, I heard the front door creak open. It was Emma, returning from school, her backpack slung over her shoulder. She dropped her things by the door and walked into the kitchen with a serious expression on her face. Grandma, I think it's time we talk about what's next, she said, sitting down across from me. I raised an eyebrow, slightly taken aback. What do you mean, sweetheart? Emma took a deep breath. I know things are tough with Mum and Dad, and I know they've been putting a lot of pressure on you, but I think it's time we start thinking about a backup plan. I sat back in my chair, a knot of unease tightening in my chest. A backup plan for what? Grandma, I love you, but I think we both know that Diana is not going to stop. She'll keep pushing, trying to get you out of here, and I don't want to see you lose the fight. My heart sank. I knew Emma was right. Diana wouldn't give up easily, and I had no illusions about her determination, but hearing it from Emma, my own granddaughter, was a different matter. I had been so focused on standing my ground that I hadn't really thought about what the future might look like if this dragged on. I'm not going anywhere, I said, my voice firm but weary. This is my home. I've fought for it, and I'll keep fighting. I won't let her take it. Emma reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. I know you won't, Grandma, but I'm just saying, maybe we should start looking into other options. You don't have to make any decisions now, but I think we should have a plan in place just in case things get worse. I squeezed her hand, her concern breaking through the layers of my own stubborn resolve. Emma was right, of course. I couldn't keep pretending that everything would stay calm forever. Diana was relentless, and as much as I wanted to believe she would eventually back off, part of me knew that she wouldn't. I don't want to leave this house, I whispered, more to myself than to Emma. I know, Grandma, Emma said softly, but we can't keep waiting for her to give up. We have to be prepared. I nodded, my mind racing. What did prepared look like? I had no intention of leaving without a fight, but I also knew I couldn't keep going like this indefinitely. There had to be a way forward that didn't involve me losing my home. After a long pause, I stood up, my decision solidifying in my mind. You're right. It's time to start thinking about other options, but it's not going to be on Diana's terms. It'll be on mine. I'm not giving up my home unless I choose to. Emma smiled, relief flooding her features. That's all I wanted to hear, Grandma. We'll figure this out together. Later that evening, I made a phone call to Mr. Goldstein. I had trusted him to handle William's estate, and I knew I could trust him now. He had always been straightforward with me, and I needed his advice more than ever. Mr. Goldstein, I began. I need your help with something. I want to make sure that my rights are fully protected in the event that Diana decides to make another move. What are my options? Of course, Mrs. Bradley, he replied. You've done well to prepare already, but I believe it's time to take the next step. We'll need to make sure that any changes you make to the house are documented, especially if they're related to your ability to stay in the home. I'd also recommend we establish a more formal plan for the future, in case Diana attempts anything underhanded. Thank you, Mr. Goldstein, I said, a sense of relief washing over me. I'm not going to let her win, but I need to know that I have all my bases covered. We'll make sure of it, he assured me. That night, as I sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, I reflected on how far I had come. Just a few months ago, I had been uncertain, unsure of how to handle Diana's pressure. But now, I knew that I had the tools to fight back. I had my home, my health, and the support of the people who cared about me. And with that, I was more powerful than I had ever been. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for Diana to make another move. I was going to take the initiative. I reached out to a local contractor to begin work on a few more changes around the house, changes that would make it even safer for me as I aged. I was going to continue living here, on my terms. Over the next few weeks, I took charge in ways I hadn't before. I made appointments, signed contracts, and ensured that everything was being done to protect both my home and my future. I made it clear to everyone around me, including Robert, that I wasn't going to be swayed. This was my home, and I would do whatever it took to keep it. Diana continued to visit, her offers growing more desperate as time passed, but each time I stood my ground. The house was mine, and I was going to defend it against her, against anyone who thought they could take it from me. And slowly, I began to see a change in Robert as well. He started to speak up more when Diana pushed too hard. He started to see the situation for what it was, a battle not just over a house, but over the respect and autonomy I deserved. I wasn't just fighting for bricks and mortar. I was fighting for my dignity, my voice, my right to live the way I wanted to. One evening, after another long discussion with Diana, Robert turned to me as we sat together in the living room. His face was tired, but his eyes were filled with understanding. "Mum," he said quietly, "I get it now. I'm with you. I'll make sure she knows it, too. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone. The months that followed felt like a constant push and pull, but I could sense the gradual shift. Diana's attempts to manipulate and control lessened, not because she had given up, but because I had stopped letting her. With Robert's growing support, I found myself standing taller, more confident and determined than ever before. But as much as Diana's presence still loomed, I wasn't backing down. This was my home, and no one was going to take it from me. One crisp afternoon, after yet another confrontation with Diana in which she had tried to offer me help once again, I stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup. The house was quiet, and I found peace in its stillness. I thought back on the days when it had been filled with the warmth of William's presence, when life had felt simpler, and I hadn't had to fight so hard to hold on to what was mine. But now, after everything I had been through, I knew I had become someone stronger. There was a knock at the door, and I froze for a moment. It was too early for Emma to stop by, and I had already spoken with Robert this morning. I wiped my hands on the dish towel, walking toward the door with cautious steps. When I opened it, I was surprised to see Sandra standing there, her gentle face betraying the sense of urgency in her eyes. "Eleanor, I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I need to speak with you about something important." I immediately closed the door behind her, worry creeping up my spine. "What is it?" "Sandra." She lowered her voice. "It's about your future here. I've been keeping an eye on things, and I think it's time we make a more formal plan. Diana, she's becoming more persistent. I'm not sure how much longer you'll be able to keep her at bay without further action." I felt a chill run through me. I knew Diana wouldn't give up easily, but hearing it from Sandra made it all the more real. It was as if the weight of my decision, the weight of everything I'd been holding together, had suddenly grown heavier. "What should I do?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to remain strong. "How do I protect myself and this house for the long run?" Sandra took a deep breath. "Eleanor, I've spoken with some legal experts, and they agree. You need to start thinking about more than just keeping the house. You need a long-term strategy, a way to ensure that even if Diana tries to make another move, you can stand firm. That means securing legal documentation, getting everything in writing, and potentially getting a second opinion from medical professionals who can vouch for your ability to live independently." I swallowed hard. I had been fighting so hard for this house, but now I realized that my fight needed to extend far beyond just the house itself. It needed to protect me, to ensure that my choices were always respected. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said, a resolve building inside me. I won't let her win. I've already fought so much, and I won't give up now. Sandra nodded, her gaze softening. "I know you won't. Eleanor, you're stronger than she gives you credit for, but this next step, it's going to be the one that makes all the difference. You need to be prepared for whatever she tries next." I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. For the first time, I was truly taking control of my future, and while the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: I wasn't alone. Sandra, Robert, and Emma were all with me, supporting me in this fight. And together, we would make sure I could live the life I had chosen. Later that week, I called Mr. Goldstein again, explaining my new plan and asking him to help me take the next steps in securing my future. He was more than willing, offering advice on what documents I needed and how we could formalize everything to ensure that I would be protected. It felt like a weight had lifted off my shoulders. With every call I made, with every piece of paperwork I signed, I was building the foundation for my independence. As I moved forward with my plans, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. I had stood up to my son, my daughter-in-law, and even my own doubts. I had faced the fear of losing everything, but in doing so, I had gained so much more strength, clarity, and an unwavering sense of purpose. One evening, after the paperwork was finalised and the last of the modifications to the house were completed, I sat outside on the porch with Emma, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight. She had just finished her first year of college and was home for the summer, and I found a great deal of comfort in her presence. It was a reminder of what I had fought for: the ability to stay in this house, to live my life on my terms, and to keep the memories of William alive. "I think you're ready now, Grandma," Emma said, her voice thoughtful. "You've done it. You fought for everything you deserve, and you won." I smiled, looking over at her. "We've done it, Emma. We've fought for this together." She nodded, her eyes filled with pride. "I knew you'd win. You're a fighter, Grandma, and I'll always have your back." And in that moment, I knew she was right. The fight wasn't over, and there would be more challenges ahead. But I had something now that I hadn't had before: a clear path forward. I had my independence, my voice, and the strength to defend what was mine. As I watched the sun set behind the trees, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The house was still mine, and no matter what Diana tried, it would stay that way. I wasn't going anywhere.